Hi, my name is TARUN and welcome to a British Audiophile. Do you get the horn over horn speakers? Oh my god, what kind of introduction is that? I'm going to go with it. What I mean to say is, do you get excited about horn speakers? Many do. Klipsch, classic JBL, well, Triangle have been making horn speakers for years, if not decades. And what I'm reviewing here today is the Triangle Genese Trios that you see behind me. I also reviewed their big brother, the Quartets. And I'll put a link in the description notes, so those of you who are interested can click on that and access that review as well. And I'd like to get a little bit of housekeeping out the way before we get started. So I'd like to thank Triangle for sending these speakers directly from France. There's no UK distribution at the moment. And also like to thank Adorama, who reached out to me and offered an affiliated link. So those of you in America watching this, if you're interested in these speakers and you click on that affiliated link, it does help out this channel. This is not a sponsored video. Triangle or Adorama have had no influence on what I say, and I don't get paid for this review. Opinions are purely my own. So let's get started. The Triangle Genese Trios retail for $699 each in the US, I believe exclusively through Adorama. So that's what, $1,398 for a pair. There's no UK distribution at the moment, although Triangle did indicate to me that once they've sorted out a UK distributor, they envisage that the Trios will sell for around £1,750 here in the UK. They're a similar price on the continent. So a relative bargain in the US, it seems, at the moment. Triangle are importing some speakers via Amazon directly, and I couldn't find the Trios on there, or the Quartets for that matter. It's the more inexpensive speakers. I don't know what the arrangement they have with Amazon, but they may be shipping those directly from France. The Trios are currently available in gloss black and the gloss white that you see here. It's a very elegant and distinctive design with the curved side panels and the pod on the top that houses the tweeter. It's very chic, typical of good French design. The height is 465 millimeters, it's 233 millimeters wide and some 372 millimeters deep. It's a two-way speaker with a bass reflex port on the front, a flared port, and it weighs in at 10 kilograms. The tweeter is Triangle's TZ2500 model, and it's housed in a conical shaped pod. It's semi-debaffled. That means there's a cabinet on the bottom half but not the top half. That's there to help reduce edge diffraction issues and provide a cleaner sound. It's a horn loaded arrangement comprising a 25mm titanium dome tweeter and a compression chamber. Now, how that works is that the diaphragm of the driver is greater than the throat aperture of the horn, and this results in 10 times the efficiency that you get from a direct radiating cone. If you take a look inside this tweeter, you'll see this gold conical shape. Now that isn't the tweeter, that's the phase plug. The tweeter sits behind that. And the purpose of the phase plug is twofold. It helps to narrow directivity, and it also provides better phase coherence across the frequency range of the driver. Now I'll just briefly explain what that means. So if you look at this trace on the left hand side, you'll see the energy distribution of frequencies leaving the driver without a phase plug in place, and then the same is true but now with a phase plug in place. And there's two things to note. One is with the phase plug in place, you'll see that the angle at which the energy leaves is narrower. That's what they mean by narrower directivity. And also there's less variation in colors. What the colors represent is different speeds at which the frequencies leave the tweeter. And with the phase plug in place, you'll see that there's much more uniformity. That means that the frequencies leaving the center of the tweeter are much more consistent with those frequencies leaving the periphery of the tweeter. And that's what they mean by better phase coherence. At first glance, the mid-woofer on the Trios looks identical to the mid-range on the Quartets, but it's not. It's a 160mm doped paper cone, The suspension is different to that on the Quartets too. In the Quartets you have a pleated paper arrangement for precision. On the Trios it's a rubber surround, and that's there to provide extra excursion, and that's needed to produce the low frequencies. Now I could cut and paste some of my comments from the Quartet review here. There's obviously going to be similarities between the floor standing version of this speaker and the stand mount, but there are some obvious differences too. So I'm going to compare the Trios to the Quartets. I'm also going to compare them to my long-term reference at this price point, the ProAct Response 1 SCs and the ATC SEM 19s that I recently reviewed on this channel and was highly impressed with. So let's do the Quartet comparison first. In comparison to the Quartets, when I reviewed the Quartets, I said they were all about tonality, dynamics and engagement, and the same is true for the Trios. They trade some of the bass extension and bass punch that you get with the Quartets for a better overall tonal balance, certainly in small and mid-sized rooms anyway. The Quartets extended down to 35 Hz, whereas the Trios extend down to 45 Hz. In terms of bass speed, well, this remains a weak spot on this range of speakers, more so on the Quartets, less so on the Trios. In comparison to the ATCs and the ProActs, the bass is a lot faster. The ProActs don't hit as hard in terms of dynamics, and the ATCs don't extend down as far as the Trios. The mid-range on the Trios is warm, rich and full sounding, probably attributed to a slight overemphasis in the lower mid region, and that's what gives male vocals real weight and authority. Female vocals and other instruments are also well represented here. Romanticized, yes, they're not going for tonal accuracy here. It's part of the musicality and the appeal of this speaker. In the upper mid region, that's critical to my ears at least, around the 2.5 to 5K region is what you associate with harsh and brittle sounds. A lot of speakers and amplifiers for that matter fall down in this particular regard. They either sound thin or lifeless, or they sound hard and brittle. That isn't the case here. There's something glorious about what the horn tweeter is doing. It's working its magic in this particular region. There's tonal richness and texture that even the ProActs and the ATCs, the best speakers at this price point, can't match. It's a real appealing characteristic of the Trios. In terms of resolution and detail, well, it's not competing with the ATCs and the ProActs in that regard. That's their bag, especially the ATCs. ProActs are a touch romanticized, not as romanticized as the Trios, and leading edges of notes are a little softer on the Trios, as well as the decay of instruments isn't quite as noticeable as it is on the ProActs and the ATCs. High frequencies are refined and nicely extended, a touch rolled off compared to my ProAct Response 1 SCs, less so compared to the ATC SEM 19s. There's no misbehavior from the horn here whatsoever, no hooty coloration, nothing harsh, brittle or shouty. It behaves itself perfectly. And compared to the ProActs and the ATCs, which are wide dispersion speakers, it doesn't have the same sense of airiness or spaciousness. This is a narrow dispersion speaker, as I demonstrated earlier, similar to the Buchar S400s, and a characteristic of narrow dispersion speakers are that they aren't as airy on top. That is associated with wide dispersion speakers, because what most people don't understand is that you need a stronger sidewall reflection in order to get that spacious envelopment quality. The soundstage has decent width left to right. It extends beyond the speakers. It's not the widest that I've come across at this price point. My ProActs are wider, the ATCs wider still. And if you're looking for soundstage depth, that's not what these speakers are about. The information is presented in front of the speakers. It puts you much closer, in a much more intimate place with the performance. And that, again, will be appealing to some and not to others. And in terms of imaging, this is not what these speakers are about. Most speakers that are accomplished at this price point will image better. They'll have better separation and space around the instruments. It's not a strength of these particular speakers. What is a very good quality of these speakers is the size of the sweet spot in the center compared to the Proax and ATCs. As you move from left to right, there is less tonal variation, and that's because they're narrow dispersion and because they also have, I suspect, very good off-axis performance. You might think that because these speakers are front ported, you can get away with placing them closer to walls, and you'd be mistaken. The trios produce quite a bit of bass energy, and in order to keep that bass in check, you need to have them a fair distance away from the walls. I had them 1 meter away from the walls, measuring from the front baffle to the wall behind them. And in terms of speaker height, the spot between the tweeter and the mid-range, that's what you want at ear level. You also want them on fairly decent, wide and substantial stands with a decent amount of weight on them. They're fairly large stand mount speakers, these, so if you don't place them on decent sturdy stands, they have a risk of toppling over. In terms of toe-in, I had them in the classic toe-in position. That was where the line of sight of the tweeter was passing by my shoulders on each side. I felt that that provided a nice balance between a locked-in central image and decent soundstage width. The trios are 90 dB sensitive with a nominal impedance of 8 ohms, dropping down to a minimum impedance of 4.4 ohms. What that basically means is that they are relatively easy to drive. I tried them with a bunch of amplifiers, the Iota VX SA3, the NAD C338, the Audiolab 6000A that's currently here for review, and my own amplifiers, the Hagel H160 and my Exposure 21 pre and 18 monoblocks. All those amplifiers drove these speakers fine. There was never a hint that any of them were struggling to drive these speakers. So I think it will partner from that perspective well with a bunch of amplifiers. Of course, some were a better tonal match than others. The amplifiers that were on the leaner, cleaner side of neutral seemed to fare better. That was the Iota VX, the Audiolab and the Hagel, and it just helped to keep the warm and full nature of these speakers in better check. Now, if you've picked up through this review that my Proac Response 1SCs and the ATC SEM 19s are technically superior to the trios, that's fair enough. The reality is that they are. But you should also be aware of this. The trios do something that those speakers can't, and in my experience, the best speakers at 2K can't. And that is they present information differently in a much more intimate way, with a richness of tone and a life and a vigor that those speakers can't match. Now, the reality is that they aren't going to be for everybody. I was quite seduced by these speakers, if truth be told. The reason I tested them with so many amplifiers was that I just wanted to keep on listening to them. So for this particular reason, they will get a highly recommended from this channel. If you're the kind of audiophile that puts musical enjoyment first and you're prepared to look past some technical shortcomings, these may well be the speakers for you. So hopefully you've liked this review. If you have, please hit that like button, please share it. And if you haven't subscribed already and you like what I do with this channel, please think about subscribing. But for today, for now, a British audiophile signing off.